From a young age, Alexander was King Philip II didn't raise him as just a prince. He trained him as a future world conqueror. His palace was filled with both swords and scrolls, and this rare combination shaped him into someone who would change history. Alexander's tutor wasn't just any teacher. It was the legendary philosopher Aristotle. He didn't only teach science, politics, and philosophy. He taught Alexander one core belief: the world belongs to those who dare to take it. These words burned into Alexander's soul. During a royal wedding celebration, King Philip II was suddenly assassinated. Chaos echoed through the palace. All eyes turned toward young Alexander. Would he survive or fall? He didn't wait for doubt. He took the crown in one hand and the sword in the other. As soon as he became king, rebellions erupted across the Balkans. But instead of pleading for loyalty, Alexander made an example out of them. Cities were burned, uprisings were crushed, and the world understood one thing clearly: this king does not ask, he commands. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia, officially declaring war on the massive Persian Empire. This wasn't just a military invasion, it was his declaration to the world: I will not return unless I return as the ruler of Asia. Alexander recklessly charged into a river and led the attack himself. He was nearly killed on the spot, until one of his soldiers saved him at the last second. It was the first moment when people began whispering, maybe this man really is protected by the gods. As Alexander moved through Asia Minor, every city reacted differently. Some opened their gates in surrender, while others tried to resist. Alexander spoke to each one in the language they understood: mercy for the weak, fire for the stubborn. The Persian king Darius III finally realized this wasn't just a raid, this was an existential threat. He assembled one of the largest armies the world had ever seen. Now, the two most powerful men on earth were preparing to face each other. Darius personally led his army into battle, but when Alexander charged straight toward him, fear took over. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving behind his mother, wife, and children. Alexander captured them but treated them with unexpected honor, shocking everyone. Tyre was an island fortress surrounded by water, and they mocked Alexander from the distance. So he did the impossible. He built a land bridge across the sea just to reach them. 7 brutal months later, Tyre fell. His message was clear: no wall is too high, no distance too far. When Alexander entered Egypt, he wasn't seen as a conqueror, he was welcomed as a savior. The priests declared him son of Ammon, meaning a child of the gods. Alexander was no longer just a ruler. He was now considered divine. In Egypt, Alexander designed an entirely new city, Alexandria. It would later become the center of knowledge, trade, and culture for centuries. He didn't just build cities, he built legacies. This was the ultimate showdown. Darius returned with an even larger army, determined to end Alexander once and for all. But Alexander's strategy shattered Persian ranks, and Darius fled again, this time for the last time. Alexander entered Babylon not through force, but through celebration. Flowers were thrown at his feet. In Susa, he found unimaginable wealth stored for generations. Alexander was no longer just a conqueror. He was now the richest man in history. Alexander ordered the grand city of Persepolis to be burned to the ground. Some say it was revenge for Persian attacks on Greece. Others say it was a drunken display of power. Whatever the reason, the sacred capital turned to ash. Darius was now a fugitive, and Alexander pursued him relentlessly. This was no longer about empire, it was about honor, about proving who truly deserved to be king. Darius was betrayed and murdered by his own men. When Alexander found his body, he wept. He executed the traitors and buried Darius with royal dignity. Even in conquest, he understood respect. With Persia completely under his control, Alexander could have stopped, but he didn't. He felt destiny calling him further, toward India, toward lands no Greek had ever reached. Alexander faced King Porus of India in a brutal battle filled with war elephants and raging monsoon rains. It was one of his hardest victories. And when Porus was captured, Alexander asked, "How should I treat you?" Porus replied, "Like a king." Alexander smiled and returned his kingdom to him. After years of marching across continents, Alexander wanted to keep going, but his soldiers refused. For the first time, the unstoppable king bowed to someone else's decision. Their return journey was filled with suffering, illness, and death. Yet Alexander's name had already been written into eternity. On the journey back from India, Alexander chose the most brutal path possible, the Jedrosian desert. Scorching heat, endless dunes, no water for miles. Thousands collapsed under the sun. Even Alexander, who had faced elephants and empires, now battled sandstorms and madness. Some say he chose this path to prove that even nature itself could not break him. But nature fought back viciously. In the heart of the desert, soldiers found a small bowl of water and rushed to Alexander to offer it. He looked at the precious liquid, then poured it into the sand. "If my men cannot drink, I will not drink." Exhausted soldiers, half dead, felt their spirit ignite again. He ruled not just with strategy, but with symbolism. After years of conquest, Alexander returned not as the man who had left. His empire was vast, but his heart was empty. The people cheered, but he looked beyond them, almost as if the world still wasn't enough. Some say Alexander didn't conquer the world. He became a prisoner of ambition. Robes Alexander began adopting Persian customs, wearing their royal garments, demanding proskynesis, a bow to the king. His Greek officers hated it. To them, he was no longer Alexander of Macedon, but a half-Persian monarch. The king who united nations was now dividing his own companions. To bind cultures together, Alexander married Roxana of Bactria, Statera, the daughter of Darius, and Parysatis of Persia. At the same grand ceremony, he ordered 80 of his officers to marry Persian noblewomen as well. It wasn't just love, it was politics written in wedding vows. Alexander started suspecting betrayal everywhere. Officers whispered that he drank more wine than water. He executed old friends over rumors and doubts. The conqueror who once inspired loyalty now ruled through fear. Cletus, the Black, the very man who once saved Alexander's life at Granicus, criticized him during a drunken argument. In a blind rage, Alexander snatched a spear and struck Cletus down. Silence fell. Even Alexander himself stood frozen, realizing he had killed his brother in spirit. He locked himself away for days, refusing food, overcome with guilt. Through all his victories, one man stood by Alexander's side, Hephaestion, his closest companion. Some called him Alexander's shadow, others believed they shared a bond deeper than friendship. When Hephaestion fell ill and died suddenly, Alexander broke. Alexander shut himself in darkness. He cut his hair, refused to eat, and ordered sacred temples to mourn across the empire. He executed the doctor who couldn't save Hephaestion. Some say Alexander never recovered from that loss. Despite illness and exhaustion, Alexander ordered preparations for his next campaign, Arabia. He wanted fleets built, new cities founded, new gods honored, while others saw rest. He saw unfinished destiny. In Babylon, he hosted a grand banquet. Music, gold, dancers, but behind the celebration was tension. Some claimed omens warned that Babylon was cursed for Alexander. He ignored them. One night, he drank deeply with his officers. Soon after, fever struck him. Some say it was malaria. Others whisper it was poison. Even today, no one knows the truth. His body weakened, voice gone, but mind sharp. His generals gathered, asking, "To whom do you leave your empire?" Alexander, too weak to speak, simply whispered, "To the strongest." Chaos was born in that one phrase. At the age of just 32, Alexander, who had walked from Greece to India, closed his eyes forever. Soldiers refused to believe it. Some claimed he wasn't dead, only sleeping. Some even touched his body and said it was warm for days, untouched by decay, like a god refusing to rot. Battle-hardened warriors, who had crossed oceans and deserts, now cried openly. For years, they had followed one voice into the impossible. Now that voice was silent, and they felt lost. Instead of mourning, his generals fought over his body. Some wanted it buried in Macedonia, others in Egypt. His empire wasn't divided by nations, it was divided by greed. One general, Ptolemy, intercepted Alexander's funeral procession and took his body to Egypt. He knew, whoever owns the king's body owns his legacy. Alexander was buried in Alexandria, the city he had imagined. With no heir old enough to rule, the empire shattered. Generals who once fought side by side now fought against each other in brutal wars. Alexander united the world. His successors tore it apart. In Greece, he was remembered as a godlike hero. In Egypt, as a divine pharaoh. In Persia, as a rightful king. In India, as a warrior blessed by the heavens. Every culture shaped its own legend of Alexander. Alexander's empire did not survive, but his name did. From Julius Caesar to Napoleon, every conqueror studied him. Some worshipped him, others feared being compared to him. Even after death, Alexander continued to lead men, not with armies, but with legacy.